today's video podcast is going to be my commentary on the Norwegian Method, which is a video that got put out quite recently from Santara Tech, an incredible sports science facility in Bergen in Norway. And there was so much going on, so much tech. And as I was watching it, I just had to keep pausing it and rewinding it and looking closer at things. And I thought, as I did that, I thought you guys would be really interested as well. So this is not quite frame by frame, but it might feel like it sometimes. But I've taken out some real key screenshots, and hopefully this commentary will add a little bit more commentary to it to help you understand what's going on. There are some things in here that I'm not entirely sure about as well. So hopefully, if you do know a little bit, then put it down in the comments below, and we can all sort of share some information. But I think you're going to find this absolutely fascinating. If you haven't seen the video, I'll link it below. It's about 11 minutes long, mind-blowing, but I think you might want to watch this first, and then when you see that video, it will add a whole lot more information to it, I think. Okay, let's get started then. This is the first slide. Now, if I just move me out of the way quickly, you will see this is something from EKF Diagnostics, and what he's doing here is preparing a whole load of vials for the blood samples that you're going to take from the athletes here. And as you go through the video, you'll see that these athletes get tested a lot. And these little vials are going to be testing for glucose and lactate at the same time in the same test, which is a really cool thing that these guys do. So yeah, look out for that. Okay, this is the scene. One of the athletes being tested. You'll see on his wrist there, he's got the core body temperature sensors being worn on the wrist. Now you're going to see these a lot in this video. So I think there's a side study going on doing some validation work or testing some new products. But the thing he's holding up to the screen for you there is his core body temperature. But I don't know what sensor he's taken that from. He looks quite happy with it. But 37.62, which it's on the high side of normal. There's nothing particularly interesting about that. But we do see this sensor later on in the video. It's not something that's on the core website that you can buy. So there's something interesting going on here. I haven't seen that device that he's holding up before, so maybe this is a bit of a new product coming from Core. Who knows? Okay, this slide looks big and scary, but it's actually quite simple. So at the very top of the screen there, you can see he's got a VO2 Master. Here's ours that's just going off for service. And this is the little white bit you can see attached to this massive looking syringe thing. And all this is a big 3-litre syringe, so you can calibrate things quite quickly. You'll see them how they use it in the swimming pool, so it's probably quite convenient not to have the athlete have to do the calibration, which can take a couple of minutes sometimes. So being able to just force 3 litres of air in it can kind of speed that up, and you can just pass it to an athlete when they need it, which is pretty cool. So this is a sneaky little shot over someone's shoulder on their Garmin screen. I'm going to try and talk you through some of the data screens that they have here. So top left here, he's got his heart rate, so 128 beats a minute. So that'd be his zone 2. So he's probably resting at the moment. 35 minutes into his workout, his current power is 217 watts. So he's doing 217 watts at 128 beats a minute. Interesting. The square you can see here where it says L quad is actually his muscle oxygen there, 70%. It does flick on to THB later on, which is his total hemoglobin. This is coming from the muscle oxygen sensors, which will show up in a second. So right now he's probably been recovering for a few seconds to achieve that sort of a number. Lap time 32 seconds, his lap power 210. So on here, he's got his power meter, looking at his torque effect left and right. So 17% on the left, 91%. So he's probably a little bit more right leg dominant. Pedal smoothness, 24% and 27%. So this looks at how smoothly you transfer pedal power through the pedal stroke. Down here in bottom left, he's got the core temperature, 38.15, that's hot. If you were that takes you into the realms of hyperthermic, when getting too hot. That's quite a high body temperature, that. So I'm presuming this is at the end of some sort of hard effort to sort of have those sort of numbers. Cadence of 96. So these bags, they look quite sinister, but they're not as bad as they look. So you'll see them later on. They'll breathe into these bags, they'll seal them up, What these get done, they give it a fancy name called isotope tracing. But what they're doing is working with a nutrition company called Maurten, who's doing some quite cool stuff actually with sports nutrition. It's all very bland, tasteless, very easily absorbed stuff. So you don't really have that sort of sickening feeling when you eat it. It's all very, very scientific way of fueling yourself. So what they're doing here is breathing in, and if you've ever had any allergies or intolerances, you might have done something similar to this, but you might have used a machine, because they're normally used for tracing intolerances to lactate or lactose, things like that really. So all they're doing is looking at the carbohydrate uptake. So they're obviously feeding their athletes something, and they want to know how much of the carbohydrate they've actually taken in is, being absorbed by the body and used for energy, rather than just being passed through the digestive system. So some interesting stuff going on here. Here is that sensor being used by some representative of the core body temperature. That's that scanning down here towards the base of the spine. Now it's kind of got me thinking as to whether the athletes have taken some sort of pill or something that has a biosensor inside it, because normally to get your core body temperature would require some sort of internal device to get it. So I'm guessing that they're probably using something here that is transmitting a signal, and he's just trying to pick up a signal and get a read on something. They do quite a lot of validation studies and see that they've got 2 temperature sensors here strapped to his heart rate strap. So there's a possibility they're trying to look at the data from those 2 and validate it to something that's inside his body. I've not seen this device before. If any of you have, then I'll be really interested to know. Interesting bit of kit. Okay, the VO2 Master being used in the swimming pool, which is interesting. You can see he's got this core body temperature sensor here actually stuck to his chest. So they're actually using these in the swimming pool as well, which is quite interesting. There's another shot coming up later about how they're using all these linked together. You can just about see on his forehead as well that he's also got those temperature sensors up on his forehead. It's like everything's being tested. It's incredible. So this little device here he's putting onto his leg is something we've heard us talk about a lot. This is a Moxy Monitor. This looks for the saturation of oxygen in the working muscle. In this case, they're attaching it on the vastus lateralis, on that quad muscle, which is a pretty common place to put it. You quite often put them on non-working muscles or other muscles as well, just to try and see how things are working throughout the body. He's sticking this down on the treadmill here. He's probably going to go for a run using this, so you normally need to stick them down. When you're cycling, you can normally just get away with putting them on your cycling shorts, and that's okay. So there we go. You can probably see it stuck down there. And they need to be light proof, which is why you've got that big black circle, because it actually transmits like a NIRS, near infrared light, into the muscle. So that black surround is literally just there to make it as light proof as possible. Then you stick it to the skin. Okay, here is like an overview of all the crazy stuff going on in here. So a lot of all this machinery you can see is actually just fairly old school way of looking at VO2 max and calibrating that sort of stuff as well. So you can just see on the left, it's a company called Jaeger, which I think have stopped making these units now. The interesting thing about this slide is these big pipes. These machines work quite differently to these. Now these masks are great. You get like a constant monitoring, but they can be really uncomfortable to wear, and you kind of get a build-up of condensation in there as well. Whereas with this system here, you don't get that big build-up and uncomfortable build-up of condensation. And if you're doing like a really good endurance workout, you're going to be on that bike for multiple hours. Wearing something like this is pretty impractical. These you can literally have on your handlebars, and your coach can just yell at you and say, okay, test now, and you can pick it up and put it in your mouth and start breathing, and it can start taking results at certain times. You don't have to wear it all the time. And in the video you see them doing that. There'll be a time when they're told to test now, and they'll put it in their mouth and breathe for a little while and take it out and be a bit more comfortable on the bike. So big, it looks really complicated, but a lot of this is fairly old tech now actually. There's even some stuff here I don't even think they make anymore. Okay, here is some what you probably recognise that you do a lot in sports science is taking little blood samples, and the ear is normally the easiest place because the fingerprints or the fingers can get, you know, sweaty and dirty because you're constantly having to like use handlebars and hold on to like running machines, that sort of thing. So going to the ear is quite an easy place to get it from. When you look at these athletes on there, like when they're talking, just look at their ears because they've taken some abuse. They really have been tested. Now he's not got gloves on there, which is a bit poor to show that on a video, but he should really have gloves on. But he's taken that blood sample from the ear. It's quite a manual process, and he actually talks in the video about him wishing that there was like a Moxy Monitor type thing for lactate testing constantly, because right now you have to test, put it into one of those vials, plot the results quite manually, etc. So it would be great to have that, but sadly taking samples from the ear is still where we're at. Okay, just another situation here. So interesting that they're also taking these when the athlete's looking well rested as well. So normally when you go for a VO2 test, the test center would probably test throughout the test. They might test it once or twice afterwards, but they're sort of taking a test where he's obviously well and truly cooled down. And it's good to see that sort of level of thoroughness. Actually, they're probably learning quite a lot about how the body starts to recover after a really hard workout as well. So that's all good. Now, this is kind of fascinating. They're using a couple of bits of tech here, which is really hard to see. The first one, obviously, is the VO2 Master. He's got his phone in his hand because that VO2 Master links to the phone to record its data, which makes it so cool. But you don't have to have it with all the straps, don't have to have it on all the time. As long as this is connected, it will stay connected. So you can send your athlete off, do, a lap of the pool flat out, or they can do a sprint around 100 meters track, and you can get this onto them straight away. It's constantly recording data, and you can just get those snapshots. So you don't have the athletes being affected by the weight and the restrictions that a mask can have. You can literally just throw this on when you want. The other cool bit of tech they're using, and it's really hard to see, is these swim goggles. These are from a company called Form, and they give you sort of a heads up display of all your data while you're swimming. So have all your heart rate, your stroke rate, all that sort of information literally sort of beamed into your eyeball from the inside of the swimming goggles, which is incredible really. Okay, let's start up this next one. So 447, this is the head coach Olav, and interestingly he's got a shirt on there from the Norwegian sailing team, who are sponsored by Training Peaks, and it looks like they've blurred out the Training Peaks logo. But he's talking some good stuff in here, and he's talking about how he profiles athletes. So he's talking about the metabolic profile, which you've seen them test at the moment, how the body's actually working. But he's also talking about how they test for the mechanic profile. Not actually how, but he makes sure that they're testing the mechanical profile. And what I'm guessing he means by that, because it's quite a broad subject, is things like the range of movement testing, probably looking at like gait analysis, swim stroke analysis, your bike position, how aero it is, and how your body's moving. Is there anything that's a bit unaligned that might cause injury? It's probably doing like things like plyometric testing as well, like jump tests, all those sort of things. I haven't seen them do any strength testing yet, which is surprising. I would have thought that would have been involved in that as well, but maybe that was not in the video. He also talks about velocity profiling, which is sort of a fancy word of saying like how fast are you, which is important because ultimately speed is the ultimate metric after all. Everything depends on speed. So I'm pretty sure they'll be doing things like how fast can you do one lap of the pool, what's your 10k time, all those sort of things. They'll have specific ones, but ultimately they'll be looking at, just actually how fast are you at things. Okay, here is a bit of a snapshot of the whole gym. You can see the level of equipment that they have here. Now, all these sensors you can see here, these are all those core body temperature sensors, so they're using them all over the place at the moment. So now on their website, they only really talk about it using it on the chest and possibly the wrist if that's uncomfortable. So I think there's some interesting studies going on here, and all these are actually attached. At first I thought it was like an ECG machine looking at heart rate, but it's not. All these are connecting to a little box here on the table, also made by Core. So they're obviously collecting data from a lot of different places in the body, and when you look in closely, these devices are labeled, left wrist, right wrist, right arm. It'd be interesting to see what that study is. Yeah, fascinating. I think that's something probably a few years away from being released to the general public yet. Here we got a couple of Tax Neos, which are great to see, super accurate turbo trainers. In the back there, you can just see the Tax Neo bike and a Watt bike as well. Some pretty cool running machines. Just an absolutely incredible amount of technology. It really is. So here is that sensor that we talked about. It's saying here 38.99 degrees. So I really do think there's something inside his body that they're trying to pick up an internal sensor and get that, a proper internal reading that they can then validate against these sensors that they've got on the outside. So interesting stuff. Okay, here's another little sneaky look at some of his stats. Now on the laptop here, you can see this is a Trainer Road app. They're probably using to control the Tax Neo Turbo Trainer and collect that data. So he's got, progress through his app. It's quite a hard workout, this. I've not seen this before. So it looks like some steps and then a really strong VO2 max type effort followed by another one. It's quite a long test as well, 1 hour 43. This is kind of interesting. And up on here on the big monitor, we get a little glimpse of some of his stats. So time 1 hour 44, his RF, so his respiratory frequency, how many breaths per minute. Then we can see his FeO2. So this is the fraction of expired oxygen. So 21% oxygen goes in from around, from the environment, and he's breathing out 17.57. Nothing too outrageous there. This is the fraction of expired CO2. And then you've got a look at his current uptake. So 68.41 is his current VO2. So that's uptake of oxygen per body weight, per kilo body weight per minute. And then we have, I think the same thing for CO2. I'm not entirely sure on that one. VE's ventilation is litres of air per minute. So that's an incredible level of ventilation. It's a big number, that. And I'm not entirely sure what these are. They get a little bit blurry to really be 100% confident. So the fact that he's probably not quite at his maximum and yet still hitting 68.41 is mightily impressive. Okay, back in the pool, and these core body temperature sensors are incredible. I don't think he's just out of the pool, because he definitely walked up the stairs and got somewhere a bit more comfortable and lying down. But core temperature sensors everywhere on his head, his torso, wrists, arms, legs, and the VO2 Master on as well. I think that someone's onto something here with all these, and how the body is regulating temperature and how much energy is required to regulate temperature as well. So I expect this to be something that we'll be talking about in years to come. But at the moment, this is all, I'd say, it's still very new and exciting research. Okay. Reason I put this slide up is one bit of tech here we haven't seen so far, and on his arm you can just see that little white disc. Now this is any diabetic will recognize this instantly. This is a little needle that comes out of here and goes onto the skin, and it sticks to your arm, stays in place for about 2 weeks, and it constantly measures blood glucose levels. So you can imagine why that's really handy for diabetics. But there's a company called Supersapians that makes a version for athletes. I have to say, we used them for a little while, and they're so useful. I wish they weren't so expensive, and import taxes and stuff like that makes them really expensive. But these were incredible, and I'd recommend anyone try them, even just for a couple of weeks. I think you'll learn absolutely loads. It's good to see that being used alongside all the pinpricks on the ear and everything, to have that constant use. I guess this is what Coach Olav is talking about when he said, I want a constant readout of blood lactate. That's the sort of thing that it might look like. Maybe that is one, who knows? Maybe this is an early prototype. Okay, this is where he starts to talk about how happy he is about the testing that's done. And there's a little bit of a humble brag here, because some of the athletes are, the numbers aren't quite where I want them. It's early season. Olav's on here. He's saying this is post-season. The athletes are off form, and we're coming in and we are seeing numbers that most athletes would dream about at the peak of their season. So he's really, really happy about how the progress that his athletes made and how much fitness that they've maintained over the winter. So a nice little humble brag in there. and here he's talking about the overall situation, about how he starts to coach, which is, it's nothing in here that is groundbreaking, but what he's trying to say is we measure all this. We actually get to know all these elements of the athletes. Remember that mechanical profiling, the velocity profiling, and the metabolic profiling. And then he's talking about going to the 2024 Olympics with these two guys. We know how fast we needed to be. We know that we're going to need to be faster again for 2024 because the level of competition would have moved up. And what he's doing now is to go, we need to be here in 2024. We're here now. And how he's going to put those training programs together is finding limitations, and the easiest way, hour by hour in a training week, as to how we address one little limitation, make one small performance gain at a time, and then we retest, find out what the next improvement could be, and then move everything forward. So it's a very, very logical way of looking at training. And he's saying, I don't agree with just, you do this type of training at this type of year. He's like, you test, you work out what the limiting or the easiest place to get a gain is from those tests, and then move the athlete on constantly, which is a very, very logical approach when you really think about it. Okay, this little sneaky bit of tech sneaked in. This is actually a fascinating bit of tech. So this looks like a set of body weight scales that you're just going to walk in on and you stand on it. But this InBody sensor is a fantastic piece of tech. It's looking at body composition, not just in terms of muscle versus fat, but also in water as well. And you can actually break it down limb by limb as well. So you actually get left arm, left leg, right leg. And probably the reason they're using this mostly is probably lean muscle composition, but also hydration as well. So I'd imagine that they are looking at how much water, the level of hydration their athletes are as well. So incredible piece of technology that you can just stand on and use so easily. Okay, this is a quick look at those little bags again to show this is the rep from Maurten, the food company, the sports nutrition company, and these are the bags that they're breathing into periodically for that isotope tracing, looking for that uptake of carbohydrate from ingested nutrition. Okay, last slide, and it's a really lovely end to the video. And this is Coach Olav just talking about the incredible team of people around him, the incredible institute that it is, and how excited he is to be working there. I mean, who wouldn't be if you're into this sort of thing? What an absolutely incredible place. And just saying, everybody there is so enthusiastic about that one thing, about that pursuit of peak human performance. And yeah, this little insight into this team is quite incredible. I hope this podcast was kind of interesting. It got a little bit geeky, I suppose. I hope that's okay. I'm going to try and put as many links as I can to all the various bits of tech that were used. There's quite a lot of stuff in there. Some of it should be relevant to people who train at home. Some would be relevant to places like us, sort of small scale sports sciencey type places, and some of it, to be honest, is probably just used in universities and sort of medical institutions as well. But hey, I hope that was useful. If you've got any more information that I haven't mentioned that you think, just please pop it in the comments, because there's definitely some stuff in there that I'm not 100% sure about. But hey, let's get involved and learn from each other. Okay, till the next one, take it easy.